Hey there, YouTube. It's me, Broken Terrain, coming to you with another crafting video. I'm going to show you how to do these great little nest scatter terrain pieces right after the drop. Let's do this. I got my inspiration for this piece from the recent holiday, Easter, and some of my leftovers. I was enjoying a bag of mini robin's eggs, and at the end of the bag I saw these tiny little candies. Checking for scale, oh man, this is going to be perfect. Those tiny little candy bits were hard to handle though, so I found a little cup and put them all inside. Some pinks, some whites, some yellows, and a blue one. This is going to be great. For bases, I thought I would use my milk chocolate bunny box. Thank you, Russell Stovers. It was delicious. This thin chipboard is going to work perfect for these and keep them low to the table. Here I am using one of my fender washers to make sure I cut the appropriate size base. Always use a sharp blade when cutting. And watch those fingers. With the base free, it's time to squirt a ton of hot glue on there and glue our washer down. There we go. Ooh, that's hot. Careful. Oh, still hot. Be careful. Clean up that excess and set aside. For the next step, I'm going to use this package of moss that my wife had purchased for me some time ago. I believe she got it in the floral section of Michael's. I'm not certain. But I thought I'd finally come up with a use for it. So I simply pinched a bit of the moss, and I'm going to tear it into clumps and trim it down a bit so I can work with it. Then, with a bit more hot glue, I am just going to squish it down. And be careful, because boy oh boy, it is hot. I start with the edges, building up the moss in transition from the base material to the washer. My goal is to create a mound of earthen type materials. More glue, more moss. I'm just going to continue to glue and push down the moss, using the glue while it's hot to sculpt it into a mound-like shape. This project required a heavy amount of hot glue. Then I got the shears and started to trim it up, because I didn't want the twigs and branches to extend past the base. There we are, giving it a nice little haircut. Looking good. Now it's time to add a second layer to our nest. I'm going to use this decorative nautical rope. I've cut myself a length and I've begun to untwine the nautical rope. first the two big braids, and then untangling the one big braid into much smaller pieces. Now I'm cutting the pieces of rope to length, and this is going to form my nesting material. I'm just untwining those pieces of rope to get smaller pieces of length to work with. And you can see this length here is a little too big. So I gather everything back up and cut it in half for much more manageable pieces. Once trimmed out, I add some hot glue in the form of a quarter circle to the moss on the base already. And I'll continue to apply glue in a circle and then go back in with these smaller pieces of rope. And I'm building up a ring of rope. Careful, that glue is very hot. I burnt myself so many times. Started using tools to push things into place. Now for a second layer, I'm going to overlap. So where the first layer's sections met, I'm going to overlap in the middle with a new piece of rope. In this fashion, I will continue to build up the nest. As I continued crafting, I started to use the long pieces and just trim them off when they were glued into place. Time for another layer of glue and rope. Just keep building it up until you're happy with the depth you're getting inside your nest. Like my other crafts, I'm only showing you this first one here, but when you make one, you might as well make two, or three, or in this case, 4. I'm going back in and applying glue and just pushing it down onto the moss shake that was left on the table. Going back in and trimming things up to make it look clean. I had my doubts about this project when I started, but at this point I was starting to feel pretty good about these nests. They were absolutely chocked full of great texture, and I was really pleased with the shape I was getting. With the creation of the nests done, I'm going to use some white PVA glue to stiffen everything up. So with a healthy portion of white PVA glue and a paintbrush, I'm just going to go over all of the rope and moss flock and really stiffen and harden and lock everything down with the white PVA glue. This is going to help keep the piece together during play, and it's also going to give the piece a nice hard surface to paint on. Perfect. Per usual, it's time for that black magic base coat. Half black acrylic paint and half matte Mod Podge. Due to the porous fibers, this little thing really sucked that Blackmagic base coat up. So I applied it and applied it again. The black base coat is really going to help when it comes time for painting as well. There's just no way I'm going to be able to get into all these little nooks and crannies from this moss flock and this rope. Once covered in our base coat, I'm going to take honey brown color and just cover the entire nest in this honey brown. I'm not too worried if I miss any spots, because that's what that black coat of paint was for. I'm just going around the nest, making sure I get everything coated well. I'm trying to push the paint into all those crevices. Looking good. You can already see the way the paint is starting to play with all those textures. Man, these nests are going to look great when they're finished. Once covered in honey brown, I'll set it aside and let it dry. Now for the dry brushing. I've decided to use a khaki color to go with my honey brown. Here you can see I've loaded the brush with khaki and gotten most of it off on the paper towel. And then I just go in and brush against the risen portions of the texture. You can really see the two colors playing with each other on camera. And the amount of depth and interest it adds to this tiny piece of scatter is just incredible. Now I'm going in with a very healthy amount of dry brushing. One might almost call this a wet brush. It's starting to look really good. I'm getting very excited. How about you guys? Excellent. Oh, I went even a little heavier with that khaki color along the top and inside, and that gave it a little visual interest. With the dry brush finished, it's time to go in with our wash. I'm going to use my homemade brown wash, and right away you can see just the improvement. The liquid brown paint getting into all the recesses, cracks and crevices. The depth of the piece just jumps. And you can see easily with this really close camera shot what a great job the wash does. Here's a second nest. I didn't need to show you me washing all 4 nests, but the improvement, the instant improvement from the wash on the nest, I thought made for some good YouTube. So here's the third. And finally, here's the fourth and last of my scatter terrain nests. God, I love a good wash. Look at that. Talent in a bottle. Having these just as nests would have been fine, but I wanted these to be a bit more visually appealing. I decided to add some bones and skulls. This would make the nests look very foreboding and make you very wary as to getting close. So I had this pack of dollar store skeletons, They're a little too large for scale, but if you chop them up and use the bones, I think it creates a decent look. So I've decided to use this skeleton. I've already used the skull, so you see our headless skeleton here. And I've decided I want to use his bent leg and the rib cage. I think that will look fantastic strewn on the sides of these nests. So very carefully I'm going in with my X-Acto, and I'm just trying to clean up what is ultimately a cheap sculpt and figure. If you're going to do something like this, please use a sharp blade and be very careful of your fingers. I certainly don't want anyone to cut themselves. Once I've cleaned the foot up, I will carefully remove it from the pelvis. And then I'll clean up the area that I cut from the pelvis and try to make it look like a ball joint there on the end of the bone, just to add a little bit more realism. Now it's time to get that rib cage out of there. I simply trim one arm off, then trim the pelvis off. Now that other arm needs to go. Carefully trim the clavicles off. And I'm left with a pretty decent looking little rib cage. This should be a fun and scary addition to my nest scatter terrain. Looks good. I've got a box of Citadel skulls from Games Workshop. It's a box full of skulls of all different types and sizes in the scale of our miniatures. This is the first time I've broken into this box, but I think these nests could use a few tiny little skulls dressing the outside. How terrifying. So after looking through, I found two that I really like, and I've broken them loose. I hope you're getting a sense of just how small these skulls are. There we go. Great shot of one skull, crushed in the center. This will look perfect. And here's the other skull. I'm not really an expert with minis. I know you got to clean the mold lines up and clean where the sprues were, and I do my best, but these pieces were just so small. I took them outside and I hit them with a gray primer. A little too difficult to show you that, but here's a picture of the 4 pieces I'm going to use. All primed up and ready to go. Once everything's dried, it's time to hit it with Apple Barrel's vanilla ice cream. I'm just going to go in and give those little bone pieces and skulls a decent little coat of vanilla. Found it rather difficult manipulating pieces this small. But I think I pulled it off in the end. I'm not too worried about getting a really strong, even coat because these are assumed to have been weathered and eaten over time. in which case the bones will be a little dirty and mucky anyway. Now those tiny, tiny skulls. I'm not sure why I filmed this. You can barely see what's happening. But rest assured there is a skull between my fingers, and it is slowly being painted vanilla. You'll have to trust me. So hard to see. So hard to work with. It'll be worth it though. Finally, with the vanilla ice cream, I'm just going to hit the top of that nest after the dark wash and lighten the top of it up with that vanilla. You know what? I love that vanilla so much, the whole nest is going to get a dry brush. Look at all that texture. It looks fantastic. The rope looks like sticks and twigs and muck all bound together in a mound of earth and soil and grass. God, it's great. And it's finally arrived. I get to marry the bones to the nests. A little too much glue on the leg part there, but don't worry. Careful picking with the X-Acto will remove all that extra glue. You won't even see it. Awesome, let's get that rib cage in there. Is it a perfect fit? Nope. But I'll make it work. Love it. Here's the one with the skulls. I've decided I'm going to have 2 nests without bones and 2 with. And this will give me some leeway during play. If I want to just have some nests with eggs from an animal or a creature that doesn't usually prey on humans, I can do that. And of course, if I want to make something terrifying and spooky, I can throw down the nests with the skulls and the bones. Finally, it's time to get my eggs in here. I started this process off by carefully trying to glue each egg in. This process was rather difficult and wasn't quite working. They wouldn't sit in the nest just the way I wanted them to, and they were sticking to the tweezers. So eventually, I would simply drip the glue down into already placed eggs. Something like that. Man, look at that, the bright color popping on the aged brown wood of the nest. Boy, that looks great. Here I am just adjusting the eggs ever so carefully to get them to sit just the way I want. And finally, the last nest. In they go, and this time I'm just going to drip the glue straight down on them. And of course it comes out very jelly. A little too jelly. But that's alright, I picked my tweezers back up. I just mix them around a little bit and put that jelly part of the glue at the bottom. Just going to hold them in place even better. Almost done. Now it's time to hit that rib cage with just a little bit of black paint. There was a lot of open space in that rib cage, and I just wanted to add just a little definition to it. With that done, while that dries, I'm going to hit the eggs the skulls and the bones with a black wash. I'm sorry, a brown wash. We're using the brown wash. And this brown wash is just going to get in all those nooks and crannies, just like it did the nest. So all those eye sockets and teeth from the eggs, and then it's just going to slide in. It's going to slightly dirty and muck the eggs up, but I think this is a much better look than those very bright candy colored eggs. Can't do to one, I gotta do to all four, right? And finally the last nest. Now that black is dried on the rib cage, I'm going to go back in with the wash and highlight these eggs and bones. And I think you can see the leg looks really good with the wash there, but wait till you see the rib cage start to pop. Yeah. Fantastic. And so spooky. Would you want to get next to that nest? I know I wouldn't. Looking great. And here the eggs are all set up. Man, they look great. I've got them on a mountain setup as our heroes have encountered the hive, and our hive queen is desperate to protect her brand new hive and clutch of eggs. Be careful. Careful, heroes. She'll stop at nothing to ensure the protection of her colony. And check this out, I've got a cave set up as well. Our heroes are journeying deep down into a mysterious cave. As they step on the carved steps, the candles light whoosh, and they're greeted by the chittering and chattering of many different creatures within the cave. What a great close-up of the nests. You see treasure awaits any brave adventurer if they can handle the dangers within. Here are a couple of nests by the snakes. Look at those skulls. How terrifying. Whoa, does the treasure make it worth it? And heroes, if you find the right runes on our statue, it'll slide away to reveal the hidden library. Did you find the hidden treasure chest? Here it is. If you did, write treasure in the comments. And as always, have a great day and craft on.